is a older from the 1980s. So this is kind of a half-assed enclosed shower. There's usually some type of wall encompassing all this stuff, is what I normally see. Either which way, this has seen its better days. You don't see these single handle hot and colds anymore. That's a throwback. So I'm glad to get rid of that. For all intents and purposes, this is a builder's grade tile. I've worked with this type of tile before. It's sort of nice looking, but it's just a ceramic, very, very thin ceramic that they stuck straight to the wall, and did a pretty good job. So, you know, it's lasted, it's done exactly what it's supposed to do. Everything has a shelf life. Ooh, I love the symmetry too. Same cuts on both sides. Everything has a shelf life, and this one has made it to its final stages in life, as everything does in your house. So this is probably plus 40 years ago that they did this. When I say builder's grade tile, meaning that it's nothing special, like I said, it's a ceramic, it's a very thin ceramic that's a little bit weak. I don't know what all these marks are. I don't know if they tried to repaint some of this tile or what that is exactly, because they're all over the place. Anyway, we have a little crack going on here, which is sort of not unusual. I rarely see it, but the shower pan has cracked at some point. It's gotten so saturated it just kind of gave up the ghost, and then that crack transferred into the tile, which is a very typical situation. Even on a concrete floor, that a concrete floor will crack and it will transfer through. It's a small shower, it's hard to I like the cuts. I don't have any critique on this shower, except that it's old and, you know, needs to be changed out. I like this border, kind of shiny. The curb is throwing me off a little bit. I think it's a brick curb because it's too thin to be a 2x4. And there might be some damage in there that I encounter as I take all this stuff apart. So I'm going to get started on this, and I will be back if I find anything that is useful information. Well, my curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to demo this curb before I got started on the walls, which is kind of ass backward for me. This is a grid plastic, what I refer to as curb perfect. Curb perfect, where you just kind of encapsulate all your mortar into this grid, this plastic grid, and it creates a curb for you. One of the reasons that I don't use it, because I use 2x4s, but the main reason I don't use it is because it requires mortar, and there's a lot of guys who believe that a floated curb is the only way to do a curb, meaning that you have mortar surrounding the whole curb, and or brick, and or a combination of brick and mortar, in order to have a sturdy curb. But what we're trying to do is not necessarily have things sturdy. If we did, we wouldn't be doing the foam products because they're definitely not going to stand the test of time, in my opinion. So it's not so much the sturdiness of one of these type of curbs, but it's the fact that with any type of mortar type of curb, you inevitably put it into your mortar bed. So the two are married. So your mortar bed and your curb material, and when I get down to taking this out, I'll show you even better if I can, if I haven't ruined this by then. But this is all embedded. This all becomes one union of mortar and mortar. So the problem is that, look how far that goes down. The problem is that you've married these two. So as I said before, this shower, because it's a crappy tile that should never ever be on a shower floor. So without a doubt, there's water penetration. When water penetration gets in here, as it did with that crack that I was showing you earlier, which beget the crack through the tile, without a doubt, you've married these two. Water is now wicking into your curb material. and so then your curb material gets wet because of the wicking action. And when that happens, and I don't know I think this is just pure mortar, but even if it wasn't pure mortar, even if it was brick, it would get into the mortar and get into the brick because of wicking and capillary action specifically. And then because your whole thing is outside, now you have rotted subfloor, which you're not aware of, because until you do a demo, you'll never know about it. Possibly you will. You know, many a time I've taken out rotted subfloors right outside of the shower, and that's where the leak in the ceiling downstairs emanated from. It didn't emanate from the drain like everybody thinks it does. It emanates from the curb. 95% of the time it's a curb, or it's the ends of the curb where water penetration gets in. So what you've basically done is you've caused damage. Yes, it's a great system, I love it and all that stuff. If there's a way to uncouple the curb material from the pan material, I don't have a problem with doing a mortar or a floated curb. But I haven't seen any application that anybody's done anywhere that they've not been able to do that they have to somehow marry these two material, your horizontal and vertical material get married, and therefore, without a doubt, this has gotten wet over the years. And since I'm not taking up the floor tile, I can't speak to the subfloor, but I almost guarantee there's water stains. If I took up all this tile, there's water stains on that plywood. And if they let the shower alone long enough, then they would have had stains on their ceiling caused by this. Not sure there's a way that you could not have the two married. I'm trying to think in my mind. Even if you waterproof the curb, you can't do that. That's why I always have my wall board even on the curb area above where the shower pan and the tile is going to be, so that there's a hollow gap back there and water can't ever go up my wall board and transfer over to the outside of the floor. That's probably the best lesson of all this demo part that I can possibly teach you. You'll be able to find a lot of tile guys who believe in these mortar curbs. But I'm telling you what I know, not what I'm guessing at. These are a danger to your subfloor outside. As sturdy as you think they are, it's not the sturdiness that we're concerned about. It's the water and water penetration that we're concerned about. So, you know, figure it out for yourself. I'm not proposing that that you go my way or that you do it this way or whatever. Whenever I show videos of damages, and in this case it's a potential damage, I just feel obligated to let you know with proof. Most of my videos I'm showing proof of what I'm talking about. So then ultimately it's up to you to decide. So all the walls are taken out. Ran into something interesting. Wall board is Durock, so kind of a pain to take off, but came out in pretty good chunks the way I do it. The Durock is embedded in the shower pan, which I don't agree with and I don't do. A lot of reasons for that. Mostly, again, same as that, capillary and wicking action. I see Durock all the time get mold and mildewy, and although it doesn't break down necessarily, it will get weak, structurally weak, with enough moisture. But that's not what is missing here. What's missing here? Anybody know? Anybody guess? What's missing? A liner, right? Where do you see the liner at? I don't see no liner. I don't see a liner nowhere. Except in this one corner, in this one tiny little corner, I see part of it, the orange liner. I don't know how it was put in. It definitely wasn't put in correctly, however it was put in. I barely see it. So these are 2x4s that were scabbed in the bottom. I do 2x6s, so it looks like that 3.5 inches is as far as the pan liner went up, which is just under the height of the curb. So for your information, a pan liner should go at minimum 3 inches above your curb. So it should have been up to here at the very, very minimum. You know, if you have more, that's great. but it shouldn't be less. And in this case, it's very much less. So that's interesting. One of the pleasures I get out of doing the demo is not the physical exertion, but finding out how other people did things, which is how I learned this trade, by making sure that I don't do things like they did there. But yeah, I enjoy unwrapping unwrapping the unknown. It's just intriguing to me for some reason. This is ending up being an educational video, which I try to do. I always hope for the best, but when I run into things, as I said before, I think it would be prudent of me, and I wish more people would do it than just me. It would be prudent of me to show you how things are put together when they fail, and you know, you can figure out on your own why the things fail, but I give you a little of my diatribe so I can watertight. It's only watertight if it's put in right. It should say that underneath, if it's put in right. So as I'm getting into this, I'm finding a lot of I never planned on seeing damage in here, because I thought it was fairly well put together, and it was to a certain extent. They used lathing, and they mudded the lathing right there on that bottom course. But again, they're tying all this is backerboard on top of here. They're tying all the lathing and the backerboard and all that stuff into the mortar bed. So not if the mortar bed gets wet, but when it does, because again, builder's grade tile, unsanded grout, no waterproofing, guaranteed from day one that this was going to get wet, which means that guaranteed it was going to wick up all the other very porous material, as capillary action works, and the curb as well. This is exactly what I'm talking about, and what I was getting at the very first time I was on camera. This is an okay product if you're doing it above, you know, when you tie it in to all of this water, moisture content that got into here will go inside of all this very porous material, soak all this up, soak around it, and then get down into the floor material. And so that's why I don't like floated curbs, as I went on before about, so I won't go on again about it, but this is the proof positive. Another thing too, nails should never ever go below your curb material. And, well, I already talked about the pan liner below your curb level. That's a big no-no. The pan liner should have gone 3 inches above at a very minimum. But then the last nail should have been at that 3-inch mark, or 5-inch, or 18-inch, or wherever your pan liner stops. That's where your nail stop. And in this case, they didn't do that. So you see the rusted nail heads, and the nail heads are shorter than where the curb is at. And that's why they're rusted, and that's why you see water stains and all of the wicking action that takes place. In addition, when I'm pulling this out, I can feel that the floor was very, very soft. So, what I anticipate, based on my feel of the crowbar against the floor, is that all this wood is rotted out. And it's rotted out for a couple of reasons. Partly due to that, possibly. I'll know more when I get into the back of here. But almost without a doubt because of here. So it probably rotted out the floor below the tile. What I said from the very beginning, I'm not clairvoyant. This is what happens time and time and again. Water takes the path of least resistance, so it could have very well rotted out the floor below here. But it's wicking into this floor area, and so this mistake caused a lot of damage on this floor area, in addition to probably a couple of other things that are incidental that could contribute to that. But this was the main culprit, because they tied everything in and it wicked over. So now we have a rotted floor, almost without a doubt. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Alright, I have taken all the nails away from here on the pan that's keeping it in. Well, I missed one right there. See how low that is? That's ridiculous. Look how this thing is tied in. it's not. One hand, and my weakest hand too. So they kind of sort of wrapped the curb. No, they really didn't. They got to the face of it, and that was about it. Wrapping it really wouldn't have helped it, because again, with all this material married into the pan material, it wouldn't matter. Unless they somehow wrapped, when they started here, with the pan liner inside of this grate. But then if you had it inside of this grate, you couldn't get this material in, so I don't know. Common sense would never dictate a shower built like that. I don't know what people think sometimes. Sometimes they don't. And then you have a tar material under here, which I really don't get, because tar material is not necessary. Look at all that. Tar material is not necessary unless you're going to pour the floor, which they did not do. So this has been a redo. So I take back everything I said. This is not the original tile. Went with the house. Somebody came in and redid this and did a horrible, crappy job tying in. They didn't even cut a new hole for the drain. Oh my God. So this is the old OSB. OSB is crap, by the way. Don't ever use this. Use plywood. They came in with new OSB, but look how cockeyed it is everywhere. It's just cockeyed, and then this is all dried out and fugly. But where the old drain was, they just cut around their new OSB and bypassed the hole altogether. I don't know how they ever tied this down, or even if they did. I guess I'll get into that part of it. So yeah, this is not. Do you see a nail? Do you see a screw? There's nothing there. Oh my God, look at this. Oh, I can pull this out. Oh my God, that's horrible. There's not a nail or a screw on the new OS or the old OSB. There's not even a 2x4 tying these together. Holy moly. So I'm going to take out this liner and everything and see what other surprises will rear its head. Okay, so the further I get into this, I had second guesses about how old this shower was, because I was told so much different information. But as you tear things apart, it becomes like a forensic type of, for lack of a better term, study. So, let me see if I can see this. Flashlight. This floor is awfully thick. And the reason it's thick, obviously they did this floor over again. So they put plywood on top of the plywood. They put Durock, then they put the tile. So the floor is new, and so is the shower. This is not the original shower. This is the reason I know. All this rock didn't come from the Durock. That's all the sheathing. So back in the day, they used to have wire lath, and the wire would stick to the wood, would be nailed to the wood, as it were, and then they would float out, mud out their walls, and that's what was done here back in the day, back in the old day. This predates 1980s, so this is back in the 70s or prior to that. And same with all this rock. This is definitely not my Durock or anybody else's. This is all the extra rock when they tore out this 1.5 ton shower, because that's what it used to be. But when they redid this shower, they scabbed in, as I said already, they scabbed in these pieces and didn't shore anything up. So when I was pushing on my pry bar trying to get the pan material out, this is the wiggle room that I was feeling. There's no support. Like, literally there's no support on this. This is the older wood, and it's had its fair share of water penetration in years past. So, can't deal with that. I'm gonna, in fact, I'm not even going to go back with this. I'm going to go back with 3/4 ply. So you can see this drain is anchored somewhere, but it's definitely not anchored to the floor because there's no screws up under that bottom flange. There's nothing there that's anchoring it. There might be. Oh, there's this. So there is a screw that they put on the edge. They toe-nailed a couple of screws to this new OSB. That one fell out, or got screwed through on the edge there. But there's nothing here. I mean, this whole void. You know, does it matter in the scheme of things? Maybe, maybe not. My take on it is that crack that used to be here on top of the tile happened because of the weak spot that was going on here. Well, the weak spot with the entire floor caused that crack. In addition to, the pan had saturated a lot of water over the years. And I don't even know when the redo was done, but it was half-hearted. I mean, this is floating above the floor anyway. Like, the drain is higher than what the floor is. And there's no excuse for it because they had enough. Looks like there's at least 5 or 6 inches of 2-inch pipe before it hits the P-trap. So there's no excuse for that at all. Whatever. The bolts are rusted so solidly through I can't even get them out. So I got to get my inside pipe cutter and to get this whole thing out. But yeah, that's where we're at. Crappy job from day one. Whoever did this had no idea what they were doing. Here's your material. Here's your shower pan. See how they did the lathe and just tied it into all the pan and mortar material, which got tied into the curb, which caused, yeah, I think I got my point across. So I am into my second day. Sometimes I'm not going to be on video every time something changes, but I thought this might be helpful to somebody out there that has the same issue. So that's why I'm recording this. The floor was so rotted out with this particle press crap board that I was kind of relegated to, rather than patch it in, almost do the entire floor again. There's still some good wood over there, more or less. Good solid foundation. However, as I mentioned before, it's 1/2-inch ply. And I don't like 1/2-inch ply, and I don't run into it, I think probably 1 out of 25 or 30 jobs I might run into 1/2-inch ply. And I don't like it. So I have a secondary piece that I'm going to screw on top of that, and that takes up almost the whole space. So there's going to be an overlap around the perimeter there, and then I think up to that 2x4, and then I'm going to put in another piece right there. So I'll have, now instead of 1/2-inch, I'll have a full inch of girthy material for my shower pan when I get to that point tomorrow. So just FYI, think about shoring up your floor. All this prep, everything matters in the end. You can't just throw things together and have it scabbed in like it was before. It's not going to work. I mean, it might work for a minute, but ultimately you're causing more damage later on to your overall project if you try and, oh, and I took out those 2x4s too. Don't use them. So I'm going back in with 2x6s all around between the studs. So the floor is down, the second layer is down, and it's very, very solid. Now I have a good foundation to build on, and that's important. These are actually done with screws. I'm usually nailing down, but because of some of my issues that I'm having with this soft wood and everything, I went in with 1¼ screws. So we're good to go, and now I'm going to start getting to the real work. This kind of slowed me down for a minute. So your tile gets firmly placed up against the pan liner material itself, and it's going to be that way all the way around. Then there's still a gap going on that stops water from ever penetrating up into the curb material or up into the wall material. No matter what your wall material is, water can't jump from the tile up to your board. Then your tile, if this was tile, would overlap that. And, well, sorry, once all the tiles sit on the floor, you grout it. Once it's grouted, the entire thing, all the way up to the inside of where it touches the panel liner, also gets grouted. Then your wall tile goes over and overlaps that with a little gap there at the bottom for your grout. And if you want to do caulking, that's fine too. In fact, if you're kind of, and I get this question a lot, your pan material and your liner are meeting there, do you do anything with that? Yes, if you feel some kind of weird way about this transition having a problem or having a crack or anything, you could go ahead and run a bead of silicone caulking along here. But this isn't finished. In the end, I'm going to be red guarding everything. So the red guard is encapsulated into all of my pan material, my curb material. This whole thing gets red guarded at least 3 times. There's 3 times for your niche, 3 times for your curb, and 3 times for a bench if you have one. So 3 times of waterproofing goes on here, and then a couple coats of red guard go up inside that crease, right where your pan material meets your pan liner. I'm going to put red guard in that as well. I'm going to slather it in with a brush so it hits the bottom of here. It hits the bottom of my wallboard, and so yeah, water can't jump up. Water can't get through to the pan material, water can't get through to the curb from the outside, and water can't get through to the inside. Is I run a bead of silicone, same as I would over here on the other side I just talked about. I run a bead of silicone right up against where my drain is at, along my pan surface, and I just kind of smooth it out with my finger so that no way water can ever get into this transition of where your drain and your pan material is at. Then I run my red guard all the way up to the edge of there as well. So that guarantees that no water can ever penetrate there. The reason you see thin set around the drain area and in those corners, specifically in those corners, because I'm pushing back where the fold of my pan liner is. I'm pushing back that fold with a little piece of Durarock that I wrap my curb with, and I stick that Durarock in that gap, and then I spread out some thin set in those corners so all 4 corners have thin set. But then I also do a coat of thin set, and I push it down into my pan material, because what I found over the years is that red guard sticks to thin set a lot easier than it does mortar. And so just by default, since I'm mixing some anyway in these corners, I just go ahead and squeeze some out around my drain area. So I know my red guard sticks very well to that. And that's it. Okay, this is the final stage before tile. This is 2 coats of red guard. Yes, 2 coats of red guard on your walls is fine. And that's just, it's my preference as far as red guard goes. It doesn't matter if you use Aqua Defense. It doesn't matter if you use Hydroban. You know, whatever the product you use, even if you wanted to use Courage Sluter, you're trying to stop water penetration into areas. Again, I've discussed it before. I don't, in my opinion, my personal opinion, because 20 years, 21 years now, I've never had somebody call me and say my walls are falling apart because it wasn't waterproofed. So I don't believe that walls are that necessary to waterproof. I do it because I have it, and it would be stupid to just throw away a bunch of red guard after I've done all the pan material. But yes, this is Achilles heel. All of this area, from probably this point on down, is kind of the Achilles heel. It's actually this point on down that it's Achilles heel now, because everything is taken care of as far as waterproofing. So I'm not concerned about water ever getting into the walls to cause those a problem. And the curb is nicely done with 3 layers of red guard on it as well, including the outside. Even the outside really doesn't get any water. As I already mentioned, and I just, for a visual, I'm showing you now, run a bead of caulking. Take your finger and kind of, you know, spread it out. So this is a completely waterproof shower without any tile on it whatsoever. Right now, I could put the handle and put the shower head on there, and my customer could take a shower indefinitely in here without any issue whatsoever. So this whole shower was prepped, I think either 3 or 4 days. It was all prepped, so it's ready for tile right now. Are there quicker ways to do things? Yes. First, to make sure that it's done right, not that it's done fast. This is the final result. It's actually looking really, really sharp compared to what it used to be. Nice modern shower valve. Remember, it was a two-piece handle before, hot and cold. So they've got an extension arm on it. Of course, I did the niche out with did the niche with the Schluter trim. That's looking pretty good. And as I always do, my little taper cuts going into the shower. I don't do my tile flush with the drain. It's slightly above the drain cap. So yeah, it's really a vast difference. Oops, let me turn on the light. Vast difference from what it was before, and many years to go. Oh, there's also a spooter on the edge, on the outside edge, as well as the other side. So yeah, very flush and nice and neat and everything with the leveling system that I used. Anyway, that's it. On to the next job, and glad this one's over. It's a lot of work. Hey, if you enjoyed that video and you learned something, consider being a Patreon member. $5, $10, $15 a month would help me greatly produce more videos. I make nothing from YouTube at all. If you're gonna call me for advice, please donate $50 for 30 minutes. My link to my PayPal and my Patreon account is down below. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and hit the bell so you get immediate notifications as soon as I post videos. And thank you very much for your support.